Hi there, this is Christian Dye from Latitude West Financial, and it is December 12th, 2023. My special guest is Mike Patels from ZLC Financial. Today, we're going to be talking about the changes that are coming to incorporated professionals, which will dramatically affect many of my clients who are, doctors, dentists, and anybody who is incorporated trying to leave as much money in the corporation as possible, but of course, still needs to take money out. So one of the things that I wanted to remind is that the information given today is for educational purposes. We advise you do your own research, you talk to your accountant or your financial advisor, the examples we give today are basically sample cases only. So what I want to do is I want to use Mike to help to field many of our questions. He tends to specialize in the area of taxation and investments inside corporation, using strategies in order to preserve it as well as to take it out. In my financial practice, we focus a lot on the planning, and we work with different teams in order to understand the tax implications as well as how to generate as much wealth as we possibly can. So, Mike, I kind of want to jump right in, and I want to talk about sort of what people were doing in 2023, 2022 in order to preserve wealth in their corporation and to take money out. And I know we're focusing on strategies such as surplus stripping. So I want you to kind of talk to us about what's happening now to start.
Yeah, thanks, Christian, for the intro. So currently, what is going on? What the options available to professionals that are both incorporated and not incorporated? So we're going to focus on incorporated on this one, but there is something called the alternative minimum tax for those that are not incorporated that we would plan to reduce your income down to 14% if you were not incorporated, because as you know, T4 income, you're up at the 50% usually tax bracket. So that is being targeted in 2024, as well as something for you incorporated individuals called capital gain surplus stripping. So March 2023, the federal government and the CRA proposed amendments to capital gain surplus stripping. So for those of you that don't know what that is converting your retained earnings inside your corp, whether it be instead of taking it out as dividend income, because we all know we all need income, especially in Vancouver, but across all of Canada. And what that is creating it into capital gains versus dividend income. So a difference between 47% at dividend, non-eligible dividend income to roughly 26% as capital gain income. So that's the main thing that we would recommend incorporated professionals do that needed extra cash every year to pay mortgages, to pay just themselves, to pay for expenses in life, was surplus stripping. Surplus stripping, how it works is you create another corp with inside of your current structure. You sell your current shares from your professional corp, your medical professional corp, your MPC, to this new co. And that new co owned by you as well. But because once you sell those shares, you create a capital gain on those shares, and it's deemed payable back to your regular corp, which then you can pull out tax-free. Well, not tax-free, as a capital gain rate, no extra tax on it. So you're paying 26% versus 47% as a dividend. This structure's been around for a while. We've done it year over year over year. And an example kind of would be if you want 250,000 out, quick numbers here, not exact numbers, but if you want to pull 250,000 out of your corp currently, you would need roughly 478,000 to dividend out you 250,000, because you'd have to pay the tax on that, which is about, non-eligible dividends are roughly 48%. Non-eligible. These are not, I'm not talking eligible dividends. As a capital gain surplus strip, to do the exact same, to take 250,000 out, you would need roughly 341,000 in income in your corp to net 250,000 out personally, which if we do quick math on that, that's about 137,000 you're ahead by doing a surplus strip, capital gain surplus strip. So obviously very attractive. The costs for these ranged from 5,000 to upwards of 25,000, depending on the complexity of it, how much money you were pulling out. If you already had another corp, and you've done this year over year, the second year is cheaper because you don't have to create another corp. You don't have to create new shares. So even with it being 5,000 to 25,000 in fees to your accountant and your lawyer, it still made sense if you're pulling out 137,000 versus like your windfall's 137,000.
Got it. Got it. No, it makes sense. Like I know a few years back they took away the income splitting with spouses, and then they changed the rules on that because then they said you could still do it, but the spouse would have to be part of the corporation, kind of the fair market value of the work, and it had to equal a minimum of 20 hours per week. And then so they targeted that. So they kind of, it's like they let it, but then the rules became much more difficult. So tell us a little bit about, come 2024, when you say that they are removing it or they're targeting it or they're removing it completely, can you expand on that?
Yeah. So they're specifically targeting capital gain surplus stripping. And by targeting, I say they're not removing it because they can't remove capital gains from the CRA tax. Like can't. Like, I mean, you can own property like real estate inside your corp, and you can pay capital gain tax rates on that real estate. And obviously you get a flow, the eligible portion of that capital gain out through the capital dividend account, CDA account, tax free. So that's a huge play in Canada. They're not getting rid of capital gains. And in order to stop this completely, they'd have to get rid of capital gains. Not happening. What they're doing is they're targeting specifically surplus stripping. So you selling your shares from your medical professional corp, your MPC, or just your professional corp if you're not in the medical realm of things. But usually this is what mostly dentist physicians do. I would say this is their favorite kind of tax play is surplus stripping. So they're targeting that. If the CRA sees now with the new GAR, the generally accepted accounting rules, if they see you selling shares from your MPC to your new co, and then creating a capital gain there, and then a promissory note to pay it back to your MPC or to you personally, they will specifically go after that, and likely they will challenge it, and likely you will have to pay the dividend tax rate to get that out. Now, will it happen? No, but I would challenge everyone in this webinar or listening to this webinar to talk to their accountants and see how many of them are willing to do this next year. Because I will bet you most of them will say no. They want to see how it goes, see if there's any changes that the government's going to allow. Because, and those that are familiar with budget changes, they go quite drastic at the start and then they start peeling things back because they realize they've affected too many people. So we'll see what happens there. But as of right now, this 2023 was kind of your last year to do this. And that deadline was roughly this week to do this. So yeah, a lot less of this because now that the CRA is targeting it, nobody wants to go after it. And that's including the big firms like M&P, PwC, KPMG, nobody.
Got it. So I guess, now we want to kind of talk about, what you see your clients do, what I see my clients are trying to do, those where this was on the table before, but now they're pulling back, they're not doing it anymore, but they still, of course, want to grow assets inside the corporation, but they also have to think of strategies on how to take it out for whatever reason. We could talk about this, about what are some of the things they're now turning to in order to minimize this taxation.
Yeah. Simply put, it's going back to what a corporation was first kind of put in place for, and that is pure tax deferral. So a corporation, you're getting anywhere from small business deduction of 11 to 12% to upwards of 27%, but you're still getting a preferred tax rate versus personal. If you take that as T4, 50% dividends, you could be 33 to 47%. So you're getting a preferred rate in your corp. What that means, what we've always tried to plan is deferral. So tax deferral. So you're paying 11, 12% or 27% to the maximum kind of in your corp. So now you have more money to start with. So let's use that money that you have extra rather than paying the extra 20 to 30% on it and start investing in the proper things. Again, all about tax deferral here. Put it in your corp, shelter it in your corp. I understand we all have expenses and people need money out, but we can plan around that. And that is where, Christian, I would say you come in there with the financial planning aspect. It is more important than ever to have a proper financial plan to avoid paying 51%, to avoid paying those dividend paying at 38%. And when you're investing in your corp, as Christian, you can allude to here as well, in your corp, investing is very, very important. And I call it smart investing. And that is, you don't want to be investing in GICs in your corp because that's interest bearing income. You pay personal tax rates on that. So even though it's inside your corp, you're going to pay 51%. You invest in corp capital gains inside your corp. And now these are different capital gains than what we're talking about on surplus stripping. These are capital gains by owning real estate or by owning stocks and or mutual funds or anything, a hedge fund. You get your capital gains. You only have to pay 25% tax, and the other portion of it, the eligible portion, gets to flow out of the CDA account tax free. So 25% of the portion of the 50 gets to flow out tax free. And so it's all about that smart investing. The other thing that's big on that we find clients, especially medical professionals, turning to, now that you're going to start to build more in your corp, you're going to have more retained earnings because we can't dividend out or capital gain surplus out all of it or a majority of it. You're going to start to see your retained earnings are going up. There's a structure through life insurance, whole life insurance, that we can move that money in, shelter it, get you a return every year. Right now it's paying between 6.25 and 6.5, depending what company. And it's completely tax exempt growth on that. So every year you put your premium in, you get a life insurance benefit, plus you get a cash value. It keeps growing at tax exempt growth all the way until retirement or longer. And then, as Christian, you can talk more about, you can pull it out in very tax efficient ways.
Yeah, and that's sort of what my clients are starting to do. They're basically using that as another asset class. Most of my clients like to invest in real estate. They also like to invest in stocks, and they also like to invest in, bonds or some sort of a fixed income. So what we do is we try to talk to them about what's going to happen inside the corporation the more we invest in that. So this graphic is basically saying that, for our high income earners who start leaving more and more money inside the corporation, that's great. But the only thing is, if it starts to hit that passive investment income, this is, through dividends, through real estate, where, they're not only having their active income, but they're having this passive income. Once it hits that $50,000 annually, and for younger, physicians and dentists, it might not be there now, but within 10 years, it can easily be there if you're leaving a couple $100,000 in per year. Then now their small business limit starts to go down, and now their tax rate is going up even higher. So once it starts hitting that 50, so this graphic kind of shows that, it'll claw that all the way back down, and it's very similar to having personal tax rates. So, our philosophy and our practice has always not only been on, traditional investments, insurance, but it's also been on planning. And, a lot of that planning, we attract a lot of people who really want to build more of a real estate portfolio, whether it be in the corp or outside of the corp. So our philosophy has been that let's take a look at what you should be investing in inside your corporation and outside your corporation that's most tax efficient. What you alluded to, Mike, was this idea of deferring the tax, which is why certain asset classes we really, really like. One of them, as you mentioned, was insurance inside the corporation, because the growth is tax-free. We can use corporate dollars, but what's even more exciting is we can borrow against it, or choose to sell it. Now, if you choose to sell it, it's basically acting very, very similar to a bond. So we like estate bonds, which is it's basically very, very similar to a bond in that it's giving a dividend. It has a cash value, but it's an estate bond because it's gotten through a life insurance company where you actually have this death benefit. Now, how is that different than a regular bond that's growing at, let's say, 6%? Is that the only way to access the cash from the bond is to sell the bond, unless you could find a lender that would let you borrow against the bond, which is very, very, very rare. But the banks will always lend against two assets in particular. One is real estate, and the other is these estate bonds, because they have these incredible guarantees that come with it. So what we tell our clients is, yes, stocks have a location inside their corporation, but it shouldn't make up the entire portfolio. We also believe real estate makes up a location, and we're talking about investment real estate, things that you own. And the reason why we like that is we like the interest deductibility off of the mortgage, off of the strata, off the property tax. So you get all these tax deductions that come with it. Plus, you have this multiplier effect when you're only putting 20% down or 30% down, but 2 decades later you own the entire asset. Then our third one is we want some form of liquidity that might come in the form of cash. Yes, it could come in form of fixed income, but of course it'll be highly taxed, which is also why we would kind of classify our estate bonds in that area of reserve, because we do have access to it. What do we do with this access, with this money that's inside? We could then leverage against it. We have options. So, I take a male age 27. He's, saying, I need to invest inside my corporation, Christian. Okay, let's get a nice, ETFs or some form of a stock portfolio in there. Let's look at some real estate, or if they're not at the stage of getting any form of real estate, then we have to build the other assets before we could actually buy them. But instead of bonds, we're going to use estate bonds. And the reason why we want estate bonds is because they've got they're more efficient, they're more tax efficient. We could leverage against them, and we pay no tax when we leverage against them. There's this wonderful death benefit, and many young people will have a need because, of course, they've got young families, or they have debts, or maybe they're buying a dental practice. So there's always going to be that need. And then there's the CDA credit, which is the tax-free payout to the estate. So people don't understand the CDA well enough, and they don't realize that you could flow money out of your corporation completely tax-free through the CDA through certain assets. One of those assets is, of course, life insurance. So to make a nice simplistic example over here, this person keeps $100,000 per year inside their corporation, 100,000, and they might want to buy a piece of real estate in 4, 5, 6 years from now, maybe a $2-3 million property. Maybe they want to buy their own dental practice. So they're pumping money in, and it's growing, but they want to also have the ability to the liquidity, and they want to borrow. So instead of having to sell it, we could, of course, borrow against it. So in this sample, this person is only, contributing for about 20 years. And we take a look at the growth of they could borrow against the cash value. But at the same time, they've got this huge $4 million death benefit that's attached to it. Let's fast forward a little bit. So now, even though they only contributed for 20 years, there's about a $2.5 million in cash value if they chose to use it as a retirement vehicle. Because then when they retire, they could do the same thing. They could just essentially collapse it and sell it to get $2.5 million, but there would be taxation on top of that. Or they could borrow against it. If they borrow against it, there's no taxation against it. And one of the things is you could borrow against it personally. If you borrow against the asset personally, it comes directly out into your personal hand. So we don't have to wait till 63. What if we borrowed against it in year 5 or in year 7? Can we still borrow against it personally? Yes. There's a couple other moving pieces, how you have to service, the shareholder loan, and how we have to, discuss with our accountant, but it's significantly cheaper than taking out as dividend. Now, if we were to borrow against it personally, what can we do with this? If you were to reinvest it, then you could actually deduct the interest personally, what if we weren't to reinvest it? What if we just wanted it to upgrade our home? What if we wanted it to go buy something with it? You can't deduct the interest, but you can take it out as a personal loan. So, why would a bank lend against this as compared to other assets? Well, the bank has a rating system, and they in the form of how risky is it. So they'll give it a number. The lower the number, the better. So to give you an idea, if they were to rate a stock, okay, what would we rate a stock that we were going to lend against? Now, they might lend against it, but the rating would be very, very high. So the terms would probably be terrible, and they probably wouldn't give you much of a percentage against it. They might give you a maximum of 50% against the value of your entire stock portfolio. And even then, it would have to be a pretty safe stock portfolio. What about a house? A house has this really, really low rating of 6. So that means they feel so confident of the equity in your home. So you own a $3 million home, it's got $2 million of equity. They'll lend, let's say, 75% of the equity of the home of that $2 million. What about an estate bond? It's a ranking of 2, because they know, sure, you have $2 million of cash value, but you have usually like a $5 million death benefit against it, which they are contractually obliged to pay out. So that has like one of the lowest ratings, which means it's actually deemed as one of the safest assets from a bank's perspective to lend it out. So much to the point that they will lend up to 90, 95%, even in some cases 100% of the cash value, and that's all tax-free. So what we want to do is we want to start to think about how can we get a little bit more creative, how we can leave money in our corporation, how we could take some money out as well, in either to invest or in order to live off of or in order to retire with. So what I always recommend that people do is think about planning. So one of the things that my clients do is they kind of like to invest inside their corporation or personally, but it's kind of like on steroids, where they actually will put money in and then they will flow the money out immediately through something like an IFA strategy. And Mike, why don't you just give us a brief idea, because this is a lot of your area of expertise. What is an IFA strategy inside of a corporation where it flows out into another asset?
Yeah, it's basically you fund the premium. So it would be different than an estate bond. It would be more of a premium upwards of 100,000 a year into a whole life policy with heavy overfunding. So your cash values would be quite high in the first year, second year, every year. But you're able to borrow immediately, like you said, on the cash value, 90 to 100%. We recommend borrowing 100% if you're doing a true IFA. And then what you're doing is you're taking that money, corporate, usually we would put it back in corporately into an investment, but you can do it personally as well. But we would do it for the most part corporately. So we're pulling the money through leverage out of the policy. So you're not actually affecting your 6.5%, 6.25% return inside the policy. You're just borrowing against it, putting it right away back into an investment like this, what you see in front of you.
Exactly. Yeah.
And now we're doubling up your return. So this one, your average ROI there is 13.53. You're getting 6.5. You got to remember that's tax exempt, which would be equivalent to 11% in a standard portfolio like this. So you're getting 6.5 plus this 13.5. Now that's 6.5 being tax free. That's 11. Now you're upwards of 24% return year over year. And that insurance policy, the whole life policy, the cash value, the standard deviation, so the level of risk on that fluctuating, that dividend rate is 0.9. So you're not going to drop by 1 or 2 or 3% in the next year. It's steady. It basically takes care of your entire fixed income portfolio right there. And then we like to put the investment part into more of capital gain generating stocks instead of bonds again or fixed income, because again, going back to what I said at the beginning, capital gains are much more tax efficient inside a corp because you get the capital gain. So it's 25 to 26% versus interest income that's 51%. And then you get also flow the other eligible portion out of the CDA tax free. So double win there. And like I said from the start, when we're doing an IFA, we're looking at getting you an amazing return but also being tax savvy at the same time.
Yeah. So like the reason why I show this is because we do invest money on behalf of our clients, and a lot of them are getting very frustrated with the stock market, with public investments. There's a lot of volatility. We have a stock report coming up at the end of the year, and we've done quite a bit of analysis on it. And we've had a bit of a run in this last Q4. But in general, it's been a pretty rough year in the stock market. So we say don't put everything in that one asset class, which is what a lot of people do. They'll invest like an ETF in an index fund with the S&P. Sure, have that with a portion of it. But more and more institutions are going towards the privates. And the privates are things, unfortunately, that you don't have access to. You have to go through private dealerships like that we have through our firm. And so this, I removed the name of the fund, but this is one of our flagships. This is one of the things that we would sort of provide. This is one of the things that have been steady Eddie, and we haven't had a negative year. And of course, we like to position this as another portion, as well as our estate bonds, as well as our our stock portfolio. So this is the type of thing that an IFA works really well with. We pump the money in, we flow it back out, and we're kind of double dipping with each dollar.
And we're deducting
and we're deducting interest. Now, of course, if you know Latitude West, we're pro real estate. We're big onto real estate. So the way we could use the IFA strategy as well is, Mike says we pump in 100,000. What if we don't want to pump out that 100,000 right away? What if we just want to leave it in there almost as a store of value because it still continues to grow? Then the other strategy, especially for our real estate investors, is we say pump it in. Okay, there's 100, pump another 100 in, pump another 100 in. But now we're just sort of waiting until that fantastic investment arises. So let's say this fantastic investment arises. It's a condo Airbnb. It's not in BC, but this thing has got fantastic cash flow, a very good cap rate, a good internal rate of return. It kind of ticks all those boxes over here. Now we could take that IFA money and now we could flow it out and still get all those interest deductibility, as well as not affecting our small business limit as well. So now again, we are doing an IFA strategy. We're just not flowing it in and out on a yearly basis. We're flowing it out whenever an opportunity shows up. And then, working with us, we would also show what is our assumptions and what type of rate of return are we going to get. So we like to, we like the big numbers over here. We like assets that aren't going to give us just traditional kind of index fund returns. And if we are going to do something as conservative as an index fund return, we want to cycle that thing through like an IFA style of strategy in order to really amplify it. And what I like to say is all you're doing is deferring the tax. Eventually, you got to pay all that tax. But guess what comes with, an IFA or an estate bond? It has that death benefit and that CDA credit that's going to come with it. That is kind of like building this huge bomb. And when the bomb goes off, which is the tax bomb, you also have built in, this massive sprinkler system to put it out right away. So, just kind of talking about our practice a little bit. One of the things that we do, if you were a Latitude West financial planning real estate client, is we hunt and peck real estate for you as well. What we're doing is we're looking for cash flowing assets across Canada. Right now, we're also doing different states in the United States, as well as different parts of Mexico. And all we're looking for is cash flowing. So it's very, very hard here in BC to find things that are cash flowing. But for us and our team, we find things all across Canada that are still doing quite well. And I know this is a bit of a sticker shock for some people. They don't even believe these things exist. But this over here is a 2.1 20-unit building. And it's still available. But what we like is we'd like to see what is the cap rate, what is the cash flow on these types of assets over here. Because we have clients with large amounts of money inside the corporation. They're using us to figure out how can I best deploy it. It's not always real estate. Sometimes it's a different strategy. Sometimes the markets are down. Sometimes, there's great opportunities in other areas, but we don't just look at the stock market with the clients that we're investing with. We look at all asset classes, and we're very, very pro real estate as well. So, what I want to do is I want to slowly start to tidy this up. For those who are interested in our stock and real estate market outlook for 2024, this is coming on December the 30th. This is a webinar it's Saturday morning at 9 o'clock PST. If you would like to join, what we'll be talking about is the analysis of the stock market, what the experts are saying, which direction the S&P is going to land, if we're going to have a turbulent year or recession or not. We're going to talk about cash flowing real estate across Canada. What are the areas that we're liking? Where do we see as the next great value? And also, how will interest rates be affecting the climate, not only in the housing climate, mortgage rates, startups, in the economy in general, and what is the prediction on which direction mortgage interest rates are going to go, especially if you're renewing or you're planning on buying. Do you go fixed, do you go variable? These are all topics we'll be discussing. We'll be bringing in a couple of panel experts as well. If you're interested, you could just register on our website at latitude-west.ca in our workshop tab, or you could just reach out to my assistant at client support at latitude-west.ca, and we'll register you. So, if somebody had a question, now would be the time to put it inside the chat, and we'll field your question. But while we're waiting for that, if you would like to talk, because every scenario is different, everybody is different. Some people, they make a lot of money in their corp, but they have to take a lot of money out. Maybe they've got a young family, they've got a large mortgage, maybe they're trying to pay back loans. Other people are in a different case scenario. Maybe they, already got the house. Maybe they're just cash flowing a lot of money inside their corporation. They're just looking for the next best asset to put it in, whether they should start a holding company, keep it all in the operating company, whatever it happens to be. If you'd like to talk, Mike and I are happy to have a complimentary session with you. There's no obligation. It's just, let's talk about your issues. Let's see if we can help you. And if we can help you, we'll kind of describe how. So if you are ready to connect, ready to meet, there's a QR code on setting up a meeting. Might not be in December, might be in January. Our meeting schedule is getting pretty full over here, but we're happy to give you guys a hand. The other way you can connect with us to set up a time to talk is just go through my assistant at latitude-west.ca. So I think, just to be mindful of time here, if anyone did want to discuss or had any further insights, feel free to reach out to us. But Mike, thanks for being our guest over here. Thanks for sharing your expertise. And I think we're going to all hope for a prosperous new year. And okay, hold on, what do we got here? Hope for a prosperous new year. And I hope we could do something similar again in 2024.
You bet. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks everybody for coming out, and hope to hear from you soon.